really felt that. And thank you, Jasmine. Thank you, Inspire, for inviting me back again. I'm always home here. I'd like to just say good morning, family. I'm always honored and humbled to be able to stand here and say anything good, anything uplifting, anything inspiring, and that is my prayer this morning, that something can be said through me, as it has been thus far this morning, to just remind us of who and whose we are, that life really is good, that life really is for us and not against us, even though we may have our challenges from time to time. When Reverend Mina gave me the theme for the month, I was thrilled because, you know, I think about authenticity, and I think about our community because, you know, we are kind of on the forefront. We've had to be of being authentic, of being our true and real self. And so the theme is authenticity equals freedom. And what I want to talk to you a little bit about this morning is your integration equals your transformation. But you could also say your transformation comes through your integration. And of course, because I'm a word person, I like definitions, and so I want to just define the terms here this morning in terms of authenticity and freedom. And of course, the definition of authenticity is genuine, real, not copied. And we know in our teaching that we are a unique, unrepeatable idea in the mind of God, or in the mind of love, in the mind of life that is unfolding. And we are spiritual first, whereas sitting in this bodysuit named you and me. And so it is the whole person that we're talking about here. But it is being genuine and real. It is representing one's true nature or beliefs, being true to oneself. And, you know, having an origin supported by unquestionable evidence, in other words, verified. So these are dictionary definitions. But when you think about what we are spiritually, we are an unrepeatable idea. You are so unique. There's not another you, there's not another me. And so each of us come here with some things. We come here with some gifts and some capacities and some talents and abilities to offer humanity. And you know, freedom also has several definitions, but the one that I'm speaking to this morning is obviously internal: exemption from external control, interference, regulations. And of course, I'm talking about real freedom, because real freedom comes from your inner relationship with the presence that animates you, that you live and move and have your being in. And we have the power to live an absolutely authentic life, you know, free of external controls. But there's some things that we have to do. You know, we've got to do some inner work, play on ourselves. We have to be willing to turn down the noise within the chatter of our minds. And this is, you know, we do this through our conscious willingness to surrender to the unknown. We do this through our gathering together in spiritual community. We do this together for our individual practices of affirmative prayer, of meditation, you know, of being in community together. So it is very important in our growth and in our development as we allow ourselves to really court and encourage and let out our real nature, we integrate. And the more we do this, this means that when you hear the term having an at-one-ment, you know, an at-one-ment is when the heart and the mind are in unison, they're in harmony, they're in congruency. And when that happens, of course, it shows up as the whole self. You know, it shows up in your body temple, it shows up in your body of affairs, it shows up in your relationships. But again, you know, there are some things that we have to do. And I think when transformation happens, you know, something's happened within our soul. There's been a movement a shift in consciousness, a shift in our perception. So, there's a change that has occurred. And, how does it happen? It's happened, and it continues to happen, I think, from an integration of giving self permission, of allowing our authentic nature, again, which is spiritual first, to be at the forefront of our lives. It's piercing the veil of illusion into the nature of reality. And of course, I'm talking about reality with a big R, and this morning I was, laying in bed, and the voice woke me up at about 4:30 and just started talking to me. Because I was, what am I going to talk about? What am I going to say? And I think often with ourselves, our life, our individual life being lived authentically when we're connected, that life will, it will inform us, it will teach us, and it's the best teacher that we have is our life experiences, even the ones that don't feel great, because it leads us somewhere. It leads us into surrender. It leads us into wanting to be, well, again, connection and community is our nature, but it compels that forward where we know that something has happened. And so, in the Science of Mind textbook, Ernest Holmes, he writes on page 108, and I was looking at this morning, we therefore arrive at the conclusion that while bondage is an experience, there is a reality to which bondage is not real. And to that reality, with the big R again, bondage isn't even an illusion or hallucination, because there's a part of us that's never fooled. And he goes on to say that's why in the midst of the greatest trial, death, or human suffering, something can rise within us and say, and it is that scriptural term, though I die, yet shall I live. So there is a life within us. There is a power and a presence within each of us. And I think as we connect to that authenticity of who we are, who we really are, and we allow integration to happen through our own unique ways, because it's going to happen through everybody differently. It's not cookie cutter here. This is a principle-based teaching, but it comes through each of us in the way that we can understand it, the way that we can live from it, the way that we integrate it, that allows us to live free. Because the outer will always lie, right? And until we come to this awareness and this understanding, we haven't had transformation. So what I know is that for myself, this requires surrender, and it requires obedience to principle, which is love. Obedience to that, to be in love with that so much that you are willing to continue to excavate what is within, to clean it out. So in other words, something must die in us so that we can live. Now, what's going to die in us? What needs to die in us? Well, let's start with the lie that we have told ourselves oftentimes, that we're unworthy, that we're no good, worm of the dust and a wretch undone. That false narrative that will come in and tell you, no matter what you do, there's a carrot there and you can't reach it, and you can't reach it. Because why? That's living from the outer. That's looking for your joy. That's looking for things from your freedom from an external source, and that never works. In fact, we go through our lives. Sometimes we bump through it, we struggle through it, we suffer, we're in hell. And I have to tell you, this is why I feel committed to this teachings so much. Before I came into this some 30 years ago, I literally lived in hell. And I know that many of you can relate to that. For myself, the hell was a long time. And I used to look at people and see them seemingly being free. And of course, I wanted that. But my teenage years and my young adulthood found me to be miserable, struggling to understand why I was different. And I knew that I was different. I didn't know it was natural for me to be the way that I was, but I knew when I was 6, for example, when I was 6, and for those of you that do not know me, I was born in Mississippi, raised to be a bigot, raised to think that my main role in life was to marry a man and have kids, and that was the penultimate. And of course, at 6, I knew with authority that was not going to be my lot in life. I was not even interested in it. And I remember sharing that with my mother, who thought that I was nuts, and because I was 6 and I was telling her this, and she said, someday you're going to meet, the right guy, and you're going to get married and you're going to be happy. Well, and I'm like, no, Mom, I'm never getting married. Well, of course, she was right. I did get married, but it wasn't going to be to a man. So I had to come through some stuff. I had to eventually get to a place inside of myself that I was willing to let go of a lie. Now, again, this hell persisted for a long time. I medicated, I acted out, I did things that oftentimes you see people do in society. So, when I see others stumbling and struggling to know who and what they are, I have a tenderness and an empathy and a compassion, because there for the grace of God am I, and so have I gone. And so what is so important is that when you integrate, you are reclaiming your whole self. In other words, you're coming into the understanding that there was never anything wrong with me from the beginning, right? There's never anything wrong with you. You have been created out of an amazing thing, and it doesn't matter how you got here. It doesn't matter who you came through. You have a right and a reason to be here. And so when you accept that, when you accept your uniqueness, when you accept that you are genuine and original and that you have something to share and offer, what happens? You taste real freedom. That freedom comes from self-permission. It comes from your self-awareness. It comes from self-actualization. Then we become fit for what? I believe this to the core of me. We become fit for our primary role here in Earth School, which is to reveal the face of love to all we come into contact with. And the beautiful thing is you get to do it in your own unique way. You get to do it in only the way that you have to offer with people. And I always do get excited about this. And I'm tender with it, because people right now, as you know, there's a lot of crazy and upset in the world, and people are starving to see your smiling face. They are starving for you to come into alignment with what you are as a spiritual being first. They're starving and hungry for this connection that we're talking about today. And guess what? You get to deliver that. You get to do it in the way that only you can. You get to give people a smile. You get to say something nice to them. I was out there's a trail out here where I live, and it goes for miles and miles. People walk on it all the time, ride their bikes and whatever, run. And I was out there early this morning, and every single person I say good morning to, and they love it. And everybody wants that. And so these are just simple things that I get to do that allows me to stay in connection, because I know that love is the binding fabric of all good. I know that. I know it beyond a shadow of a doubt. So I'm not concerned or worried about the outer. What can I do here today? What can you do here today at this time? So I just want to encourage us to be willing, to offer that in any way that you can. Contemplate that, like cultivate that in yourself, because it's really important. And even in scripture, and I just want to say too, I'm a Bible loving lesbian. However, I don't take the Bible literally. It is a book of allegory. It's a book of prose and of poetry. It has a lot of good stuff in it, but it isn't the only good book. It is a good book. And you know, it says in Galatians 5:13, for you were called to freedom. Now we're talking spiritual. You were called to freedom. Okay, people, only do not turn your freedom into an opportunity for the flesh, but through love serve one another. Now, I would interpret this because people want to, you know, the fundamental thing out of the flesh. No, what they're saying is, you've been called to freedom. You're free in your real nature. That's who you are. You were born to be free. Okay, and as you've stepped into that, don't turn it into something, an opportunity for self-aggrandizement. You know, don't turn it into anything for self-gain. What we're here to do is offer that to others so that they know that they too can be free. That's what you get to do by your example. That's why it's so important to just live your amazing, fabulous self and just to allow what wants to come out of you. So again, we can't do that. I can't do that. You can't do that if we're constantly looking for validation from the outer. It's not going to happen. And even if you get some validation from the outer, it's not lasting. That validation, that self-permission has to come from within you because you have met yourself. You've met the real you. You have integrated that into your life. And you have been transformed, what? By the renewing of your mind and your heart, your spirit. And as McKay was sharing, that cell that was aberrant for a while, that was off over here, has now been restored. You didn't have to have it radiated out of you and just kill it all. No, there's a way to be restored. And it can happen in the twinkling of an eye. So even though I may use some of these terms or talk about scripture, you can read anything that is uplifting, that gives you a chance and an opportunity to examine yourself, to examine where you are in love, to continue to give yourself permission, right, to be transformed because you've accepted what's true about you, what's true about your nature, that you are a limitless being. Now that is the truth with a big T. And the only thing that's ever coming at us in the outer is people's unhealed and unresolved and regurgitated thought process. That's why we see such a challenge, you know, in the world right now, and a challenge in our country is people are operating from not their highest, often cases, you know. And, you know, I just want you to think about this. You know, we all know here what's happened in this last week in our country in terms of the political shift and this tsunami of energy and whatnot. But you can just look at people's lives. You could even look at these two individuals' lives in the political arena, and you can just look and examine and listen who's authentic and who isn't, you see. And when you don't act from an authentic place, what happens? You do become aberrant because you are covering up. Again, I share with you, I lived in hell for many, many years when I was younger because I didn't know who and what I was. I didn't know who and who I was. But once I came into that understanding, I wanted more of it, and I didn't want it just in here. It's not going to do you a whole lot of good to stay up in here. I wanted to have an integration. And so my life experience has called out many, many public failings, many, you know, humiliation. I mean, I always used to joke and say that I obtained a PhD in the School of Hard Knocks when a master's was as far as you could go. So I have gone through some things, but that's what my soul was calling out for me so that I could surrender to a greater version of who and whose I am and who and what I am. And that is what I encourage all of us, because if I can, if a girl like me can, so can you. We are not limited by anything except our thought patterns, and our behaviors come out of that. And that comes out of what we think about ourselves, what we believe about ourselves, what we know about ourselves. So, you know, I was thinking that this new way of being can only come through us, you know, authentically. And guess what? We have to continue to do the work, you see, right? I have had an integration, but I fall asleep. I have an errant thought. That's our condition. That's okay. That's all right. We don't have to make we don't have to blow that up. We take our breaths. We have a thought. Oh, okay. And we have a shift in our awareness, a shift in our perception, which gets us back to being on track. You know, I am married to an African American woman. We have been together almost 27 years. We have spent a lot of time growing one another. It has not been always easy or fun. She is a great teacher in my life, but I am continuing to unlearn patriarchy. I am continuing to unlearn racism. Now consciously, I know better, but whatever's been in there, I still continue to excavate it all the time because it's so important to me, because I want to be a place for love. That burns in me. That is the most important thing. And so for each one of you, whatever your situation and circumstances are in life, once you've made that connection to the presence of love that you really are, when you've made that connection, you can't do, you must surrender to that. It would nip at me, and it would nag at me, and it would do this constantly at me all the time if I wasn't in alignment with it. And it does do that if I'm not in alignment with it, because it wants out into expression. That's what it wants in my life. And I believe that for all of us in our own unique way. So what I'd like to invite us to do this week, well, seriously, because I like to give you some tools. We need spiritual tools. Sit down and take the time with this, like we did when we looked at our hand and then we were with our hand. Write down 5 ways that you are individually unique and genuine. Just 5 of them. I'm sure there are 100. Write down 5 of them. Then just take one of those. Just sit with it and let it percolate in you. Take one of those things and share that one authentic way that you've chosen. Share that all week long with everybody in your life, with everybody you come into contact with, everybody you have an interaction with. Okay? That's part of it. Now, the other part, I want you to consciously watch the good that happens. Watch that. Watch the impact, because you're conscious. Watch the impact it has on other people. Observe it and write it down. It's important to write down things, milestones on our journey, so that we can go back and we can look at those things and we can say, oh yeah, I remember that. I remember writing that down, and then I went out over there and I met such and so, and I ran into the woman, and this happened, and I watched the effect that it had. That is how we prove the principle. That is how we teach ourselves that this thing really works, because it does really work. So, let's do this. Give yourself, like your marching orders, give yourself permission to shine. And our community, as we know, we're under, there's an onslaught, there's an assault. We know that African American people have been under assault for as long as I've been alive on the planet. Things are going on. We're in a time of political upheaval. So I just want to tell you again, your voice matters, your love matters, your light matters. It is so important right now. And all you have to do is give yourself permission to be authentic, to not cover up anything. There's nothing that you need to hide, to just shine your light and allow yourself to be. That is the power of life in us. That is the power of love in us. We have the ability to do that. We get to come over and overcome everything in our way. So do not be fooled by the appearance. Don't be fooled by it. Because again, if you go back to 1 week ago, okay, maybe a few hours ago before now, people were like, with what, the things that are going on in the political arena. I think I just got a little excited there. Sorry, I apologize for that. I pulled out my microphone. And then you just saw a big shift. So that was an example, even though that's a political thing, that's an example of what happens when hope springs into action. It's eternal, it's contagious. That's why we say it springs eternal. Guess what? Your spirit springs eternal. It doesn't matter what you have done. It doesn't matter what you have said. It doesn't matter. And if there are things that you want to improve on, guess what? You get to, because you have a well within you. That well is not dry, and it will not ever run dry. That is your true power. So to be free, let your spirit out, shine your light in only the way that you can, and just watch it take over your life, and stay in community together. You know, it's very important at this time that we remain here for one another, that we're in solidarity and in unity. It doesn't mean that we have cookie cutter thinking. It doesn't mean that, you know, we agree on everything. That has nothing to do with it. But when you stay aligned with principle, when you stay aligned with love, that is your real nature, when you stay aligned with possibilities for your life and for the world, when you're willing to commit to that with a fire in your belly, you see and you watch your own life transform. And that's what it's all about, is integrating ourselves so that we are transformed and we move out into that. And then you have something to wear. You got a coat on, some armor, if you will, the armor of love, which is beautiful and shows up as fabulous rainbow you know, that is what we get to offer. So that's my message this morning. And just go for it, okay? Let it out, let it happen, let it be. That's what I have to share with you this morning. And so it is.